Well, I've been hearing all day that Australia's borders are closed because of this coronavirus pandemic. It's currently what is it? It's 11:57 p.m. I'm just about to go to bed, and I just thought I'd shoot this quick clip because it just occurred to me, and it's the 21st of March 2020, and I just thought I'd shoot this clip before I go to bed because this is Flight Radar 24. This is Flight Radar 24. And this shows current flights around the world live, in real time. That's Australia there. There seems to be plenty of planes, doesn't there? That's it. That's Indonesia. There seems to be plenty of aircraft around, doesn't there? Look, lots of international flights here, coming from all directions. I mean, there's the Pacific there over on the right, and I'll just pick one. I'll just pick any one of these at random and just see where it's come from. So that's QFA 36. QFA 36 is Qantas aircraft. Oh, it's an A380. It's a big one. Singapore to Melbourne. And it's still got a fair old way to go. Yeah, it probably is about 5 hours, 5 or 6 hours from there. Estimated time arrival at Melbourne 5:46 a.m. So if this is what it looks like when Australia's borders are closed, I have to wonder what it looks like when it's all normal. I don't often look at Flight Radar 24. So this is this is another Qantas plane, QFA8. And what's this one? This is Dallas, Texas to Sydney. Gets in at 6:30 in the morning. Gives you some idea of the sort of distances we're looking at here. Australia is about 4,500 kilometres across. So that aircraft is about, I don't know, 3,000 kilometres away, something like that. No, it must be more than that, mustn't it? If it's getting in at, what was the time? If it's getting in at 6:30, it's 6.5 hours from Sydney. Sydney is probably where that middle balloon is. Sort of around, yeah, that's probably Sydney, would be in here somewhere. So it's going to take this aircraft 6.5 hours to get from there to there, give you some idea of how big Australia actually is. But all of these flights are international. I'll just pick another one at random. What's this one here? Let's have a non-Qantas. That's SIA, will be Singapore Airlines. Yep, it's a Singapore Airlines. Singapore to, he's going to New Zealand, so he's not actually stopping at. He's overflying Australia, but he's not going to land here. Okay, that was a bad choice. Another Qantas. So many of these here, isn't there? UAE, that'd be United Arab Emirates. So that's going to be a 380. I don't think they fly anything else, do they? There's an Emirates aircraft from Dubai to Melbourne, and it's arriving at 5:50 a.m. in Melbourne. So it's going to take him another 5 hours just to fly across Australia there to Melbourne. That's probably Melbourne there. As I say, there we go. It's now 12:01 a.m. and I'm going to go to bed. It's the 22nd of March 2020, and this is what the air traffic looks like in and out of Australia when Australia's borders are apparently closed. Anyway, let's get back to the crazy UFO conspiracy stuff, shall we? Right, back to the UFO ET twaddle. As you can see on the right there is our old mate Bob Lazar, famous fantasist, claims he works on re-engineering, back engineering aliens, spacecraft, when in fact he was a self-employed film developer, and he did have something to do. Apparently, he had something to do with Area 51. He was a He was some sort of technician. He had no security clearance. And I suspect, when he took the people out into the desert and showed them, said there was going to be something tested that night, he's smart enough to know that you got the Janet flights coming in and out, and there was a Janet flight coming in, bringing the night shift, possibly. And, if you look at an aircraft as it's coming towards you, as it's coming into land, it looks like it's a big bright white light in the sky that descends, or something. Often it will appear to hang in the sky, depending on how far away it is, and then it will just drop as it comes into land. And I suspect that's what he showed them. From a distance, that's exactly what that's going to look like. Apparently it was only John Lear that actually saw anything that night when he took the 3 or 4 people out there. So, and we all know how credible John Lear is. All right. Well, this is the article that I linked to in a comment that I put on Ben Emlyn Jones's channel fairly recently. Ben, when he did his he calls his videos reply videos, but of course he never replies to anything. Anything significant, he just skips over it, so he doesn't have to reply to it. And when he got to this, he said, that's the guy from the Skinwalker Ranch. That's the fellow on the left, Eric Davis. He's the he is apparently a real physicist or something. I did do a video that had a bit about Eric Davis in it. Oh, that's right. Yes, and I'll show you a clip a little bit later on. He was the UFO leak of the century. He was involved with that, with the Admiral Wilson notes. And of course, no such thing. It certainly wasn't the UFO leak of the century. The Admiral Wilson said that these guys went to see him, but he thought they were. He just sort of humoured them, and he didn't even look for any UFO information. So again, all blown out of all proportion. Eric Davis was something to do with the Skinwalker Ranch and Hal Puthoff. So these guys have got zero credibility. Both these guys are now involved with the TTSA. And zero credibility there, and I'll come to that a little bit later on. But first of all, let's just have a bit of a look at what Eric Davis has to say about Bob Lazar. And I'll leave a link to this below. I'll leave a link to all the source material below, so you can read it all for yourself and form your own opinion. Of course, you don't have to. You don't have to go, God, there's if Mumbling says this is the case, then this is the case. You can read it for yourself. Not that's terribly likely, of course, but especially in Ben's case. For those not familiar with the Bob Lazar story, well, let's take it for granted that everybody that's going to be watching this video will be familiar with the Bob Lazar story. Bob Lazar tells us he worked at Groom Lake at an area called S4, reverse engineering alien spacecraft. And there's Bob. And we'll get down here because there's an upcoming video if it's not out already. Bob Lazar, Area 51 and flying saucers. Personally, I would save your money. I'm making this video because the weather's pretty grim outside, unusually. So if you could hear the howling noise in the background, that's the wind. That's why I'm making this video. Okay, astrophysicist Dr. Eric W. Davis was engaging in the debate and posting his very strong comments about the upcoming film and Lazar. According to the website of Earth Tech International, where he works as the Chief Science Officer, Davis' research specialisations include breakthrough propulsion, physics for interstellar flight science, beamed energy propulsion, advanced space nuclear power and propulsion, directed energy weapons, future and transformational technology, general relativity theory, quantum field theory, quantum gravity theories, experimental quantum optics and SETI, exoarchaeology, xenoarchaeology. Now, when I did the last thing on the Skinwalker Ranch, I actually did a bit on Eric Davis. I think I showed a Google Earth picture of his very modest house, and he's a one-man band space exploration company in his garden shed. So just you know, I'm not hiding the fact that Eric Davis here seriously lacks credibility himself. But this is a bit of a trick used by a lot of these sort of people. Stanton Friedman would spruik the Roswell story, yet call others a fake. He would call Lazar a fake. It's a bit of a how can I be bullshitting you when I'm telling you these guys are fakes? There's the psychology involved with this sort of thing. But apparently this guy is a real scientist, and he's involved with the TTSA. He was involved with the Skinwalker Ranch, but his one-man space exploration company doesn't seem to be doing as well as Mr. Musk. Certainly looking at his house, it doesn't look like he makes too much money out of it. But Davis was also featured in the Corbell documentary. That's funny. Yes, Hunt for the Skinwalker. Okay, now, what does the title tell you? Hunt for the Skinwalker. Tells you that you're going to spend your money on the documentary and not see a skinwalker, because if they'd found the skinwalker, it wouldn't be called Hunt for the Skinwalker. And of course, there's not one credible image. There's one image that I'll show you later on, comes from an 80s science fiction film. And all the time and money that was spent at the Skinwalker Ranch, of course, they produced not one video clip and not one credible image. I've only seen one image that is not credible. I haven't seen any other images. I certainly haven't seen any video footage of anything from the Skinwalker Ranch. Whatever is in the videos isn't human. It's not natural. It's under artificial control. Says Eric W. Davis, the astrophysicist who wrote the study on wormholes and stargates. We don't know where it comes from, but it's here, and it's been here for some time. Okay, it isn't human. It's not natural. It's under artificial control. Okay. So the critter doesn't have a mind of its own. Eh? It's under artificial control. It's a bit like this. I was watching the Ben Emlyn Jones thing this morning while I was having my breakfast, and he's doing a review on the one of the episodes of Project Blue Book, which is the Hopkinsville incident. And the aliens are described as having glowing eyes and pointed ears and claws. And, these are 50 science fiction characters. Straight out of science fiction. Critters with claws aren't going to have the physical dexterity to be able to build technology. Can you imagine a bird like an owl or an eagle with claws? If it was as intelligent as us, it's not going to be able to develop a technology. It's not going to be able to go through an industrial revolution because it doesn't have the physical dexterity to build machines, and certainly not electronics. So, it's nonsense. There's just no critical thinking skills at all among these enthusiasts of this alien phenomenon. And I've said it before, but that's the difference between a researcher and an enthusiast. An enthusiast will discard anything that suggests that it doesn't involve ET. Whereas if you look at what's being, or you listen to what's being said, and you look at what evidence in quote marks is being presented, none of it holds up. None of it at all. Okay. So let's get to the bit that Ben couldn't be bothered to read. Eric Davis. Lazar isn't worth a documentary film. As the interviewer, well, you might want to see the documentary first before making such a judgment, Eric. Unless maybe you've seen a rough cut of the film. George Knapp, again, George Knapp will tell you anything for money, has spoken about how he only got involved with it because he realised all this ET stuff was so good for the ratings of, what is it, GLAS or whatever the TV station's call sign is in Las Vegas. Has spoken about how some witnesses he tried to speak to about Lazar were harassed, in some cases threatened. That in itself tells me Bob had something to say that certain people didn't want corroborated. Yeah, okay. Now, if this is true at all, I mean, this could be anybody that's just told Knapp that, Lazar would have told Knapp who to talk to, and he would have told them to tell Knapp that they've been harassed not to talk to him. So don't worry, you're not actually going to have to tell him anything. Just tell him you were threatened, so you can't talk about it. You know, it's transcript. This transcript excerpt from something or other alone makes me want to see a doc about Bob. Okay, now this is we're getting to the relevant bit here. George Knapp. George Knapp. When Bob Lazar thought he was going to be, I probably shouldn't say this, I'll go ahead. When Bob thought, I was reading this through the viewfinder, so sorry about the stuttering. When Bob thought he was going to be taken out, yeah, for a steak probably, yeah. He had his particle accelerator in his house, and he had his container with element 115 right in front of it. That's probably cornflakes or something. And he was ready to flip the switch and say goodbye to Las Vegas. Oh my God, says Art Bell. Hang on, let's just skip over this. This is just his science fiction nonsense. So what does Eric Davis have to say? Nobody can put a particle accelerator in their home unless the house or their entire property is dozens of square miles in size. Now, Eric is actually wrong here. I had a particle accelerator in my house. In fact, I had probably 3 or 4. And I certainly had a particle accelerator in my bedroom, which I think is what Bob Lazar claimed. Now remember, this was in the days when televisions had cathode ray tubes in them. You have a cathode in a long glass neck, and you put an extremely high voltage on a coating on the inside of the television tube at the front, in front of the screen, 30,000 volts, something like that. And the electrons are accelerated down the neck of the tube from the cathode, and they produce a bright spot on the front of the screen. That electron beam is scanned with electromagnetism. There's electron coils around the neck of the television tube that scan the little white dot up and down and left to right. It does it so fast that it actually scans out a picture, and that's what you watch. But technically, a cathode ray tube is a particle accelerator because it's accelerating electrons right down the neck of the tube, and they're smashing into the phosphor coating on the front of the tube. So Eric Davis is wrong there, and I think that's what Bob Lazar was talking about. He thought, well, he never put it in those words, but you know, it sounds impressive, doesn't it? But he would have said, yeah, I had a particle accelerator in my bedroom. You know, that just means he had a television in his bedroom. So Eric Davis probably hasn't thought of that. Being a physicist, or being a real physicist, he probably thinks a little bit beyond that. He doesn't think of ordinary domestic appliance as being a particle accelerator, but indeed a television with a cathode ray tube is a particle accelerator. Okay. Element 115, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's get down to the interesting bit here. We're not really interested in element 115 because I think it was the next element that was missing on the periodic table, and anyone could just make it up and say, yeah, well, it's going to be this element, you know, or two or three boxes along the periodic table that aren't filled in, you know. It's going to be this one they're using, you know, and of course eventually you're going to get there, aren't you? Okay, element 115, named Moscovium in December 2015. Moscovium's 4 isotopes have a half-life ranging from 37 milliseconds to 650 milliseconds. When you think of half-life of plutonium, it's about 12,000 years, isn't it? So it's impossible for Lazar to have any muscovite isotope in his house, nor the gigantic particle accelerator that produce it via the collisions or other large atoms. Yeah, so Eric Davis is thinking about the sort of particle accelerators they use in physics, you know, to smash atoms up. He's not thinking about televisions. Also, a roadrunner who ran programs at Area 51 for Los Alamos told me that he knew Lazar's female supervisor at Area 51 and had her pull up his personnel file. Lazar worked as a radiation health monitor in the unsecured logistics contractor facility outside of Area 51. So he was never inside that site, and he never held security clearances because he didn't need them to work in an unclassified area. Lazar made up his entire cockamamie story about the UFO that he saw in a building inside Area 51. He was never exposed to any classified information, facilities or programs in his work area. So Bob's a pretty smart guy, you know, he's a technician, and he's actually on that site, and he's just made up the whole story. Especially, I think at the time, as John Lear was asking him about it, or he was talking to John Lear about it. He realised that the story, if he told the story to John Lear, it would have legs, and he told it to John Lear and George Knapp, and that's how the legend began. I'm sure that's news to George Knapp. I'm not talking about the alleged particle accelerator stuff. Okay. So while with so many people, it'd be best if you read this for yourself, otherwise I'll be here all day, but we'll just stick to the more interesting bits, I think. Eric Davis. So basically the interviewer is questioning Eric Davis's statement. I gave you the facts. Claims of harassed and threatened people is unsubstantiated hearsay. George is not lying. He just does not know my Roadrunner contact, who lived in Las Vegas near Indian Springs and worked at Area 51, knew Lazar's supervisor there at the time this all unfolded. Yeah, okay. So what Eric Davis is saying, is that he knew someone that knew Lazar's supervisor. They pulled up his file. He was a technician. He wasn't a physicist. This of course falls in line with most of the Lazar story. You know, Lazar. Yeah, people asked Lazar. Lazar told Linda Moulton Howe he never had a university degree. Yet I did a video about Lazar where I show that Linda Moulton Howe saying that Bob Lazar told her that he never had a university degree, and he only went along to the university to pick up friends and that sort of stuff. He might have done a couple of courses there, but he never got a degree. He was never enrolled there for the courses. I also included a clip of Bob Lazar where he's standing on a lectern, and he's being questioned by the audience, and they're saying, "Oh, when did you get your masters from Caltech or whatever it was?" And he's going, So he did lie about, and then he came up with a date. So he did lie about getting the degrees. So you know, he's got zero credibility. He was prosecuted for running a brothel, I think, or having something to do with a brothel, didn't he? And around there, so you know, these are not people that are oozing integrity. All right, so let's just have a quick look at Eric Davis. What else have I got here before I go on to that? Where's the cursor? Let's go down here and there. Okay, I'm going to stop the camera and go on to the next clip. But basically, what this is saying is the sort of stuff that Stanton Friedman was saying. You know, that Bob Lazar may very well have worked at Area 51, but he wasn't a physicist. He certainly wasn't working on any classified material. He had no security clearance. He was just a technician. And of course, you know, that's why people will say, well, yeah, they seen Bob Lazar at Area 51 because he was there. He was working as a technician, but he wasn't working in classified areas. Okay, well, let's just move on. Right, so this is Eric Davis. Remember when there was all that fuss going around about the UFO leak of the century, and it was on Richard Dolan's channel, and he was enthusiastic about it. Of course, he has to be. That's his living. Unfortunately, Richard Dolan has gone down the path of supporting a lot of stuff that he must know is science fiction. Because he said he never wants a real job. His business, his income, his livelihood is ET UFO stuff. Problem with that, of course, is that you have to you have to get people to watch it, and you have to get people to buy it, and if that's your living, so you're going to have to support stuff that you know is rubbish. Now, this is Linda Moulton Howe's channel, Earth Files, reported and edited by Linda Moulton Howe, and she's talking about the 15-page EWD notes. That's the Eric something Davis, the physicist we were just looking at. He was the guy that had the meeting supposedly with Admiral Wilson. Now, what do we notice about the Linda Moulton Howe site is, now if you want to read about the UFO leak of the century, Part 1, leaked 15-page EWD notes. You don't have to pay Linda Moulton Howe, by the way, for these. They are available everywhere. I can show them to you myself. About UFOs, ETs, and back engineering UFO tech. Click here to subscribe and get instant access to read this report. So, see, this is Linda's business. So Linda has to spruik all this bloody nonsense in order to support herself, to put bread and butter on the table. Okay, let's just move on from Earth Files. Linda Moulton Howe wanting money for you to read the report. As I say, the report is available completely free in a number of places. In fact, there it is. There's the EWD notes there, and I'll leave a link to this below. I won't go into this in detail. Suffice to say that its provenance is ambiguous. It's really not worth looking at, really. If you're a serious researcher, you'll discard it pretty quickly. And then we've got this other thing here: the UFO leak of the century ? I'll leave a link to this below as well, and you can read this. But basically, this says it's a lot of crap. What happened last weekend was, say, if you like the X-Files and you're a conspiracy theorist, you love ET and aliens and all that. What happened last weekend was like a gift from heaven, the holy grail of script writers' wet dream, because every paranoid fantasy or suspicion one holds of big government. Remember, all this stuff is in the X-Files series. If you watch the television series The X-Files, you'll see all of this stuff. UFOs powered by free energy. I wonder where that came from. Ben Emlyn Jones talks about this all the time. He's convinced there's some sort of connection. And I wonder, I'd never heard that before, and I thought, where does this connection from between UFOs and alien spacecraft and free energy come from? And it comes from The X-Files. It's an episode of The X-Files. Every conspiracy theory about shadowy goons operating with absolute power, blank checks, zero oversight, has just expressed itself in allegedly authentic package of notes dubbed the Core Secrets transcripts. It's nonsense, of course. It's just sensationalistic rubbish to keep the interest in this subject up, because it's waning, If you look at the stuff that people are talking about in the UFO ET field, it's all old stuff. It's Rendlesham, it's Roswell, it's Berwyn Mountains. All this stuff happened decades ago. There is no new stuff. Now, the UFO aficionados, enthusiasts, will tell you, the sighting rate's going up, and something is about to happen. It's more and more. It's all ramping up, and we're getting closer and closer to disclosure. And of course, it's all rubbish. There's no big UFO stuff on the news. They might refer back to the footage that was released last year, and it wasn't released by the Pentagon, apparently. It was released by that, I can't remember his name now, Alexander. And they say that these objects were exhibiting characteristics that you do not see, that we cannot match. This thing appeared to came out that was all roiling under the seawater. So it was a big object under the seawater, and the seawater was roiling. We don't see that in the footage. All we see in the footage is a target that stays perfectly in the crosshairs of an F-18, I think it is. all the time for the whole length of the video. It seems to be in a gentle left turn. But there's no there's no aerobatics. It's not appearing and disappearing. It's not going off at funny angles. It's not exhibiting any characteristics that the F-18 could not match, because if it was, it wouldn't have stayed perfectly in the crosshairs of his camera sight. And there's no footage whatsoever of the roiling seawater and all this sort of stuff. So there you go. I'd dismiss that personally as being anything ET related. So if we move on, excuse me. Yeah, so this is the Admiral Wilson actually said he never looked for UFO data. Now remember, this is supposedly the UFO leak of the century. We'll just click on that for a second. This is going off at a bit of a tangent here, but retired high-ranking military intelligence official rumoured to have been snubbed in his attempts to obtain sheltered UFO data insists he never even bothered to look for it. Never. Retired Rear Admiral Thomas R. Wilson replied Tuesday when asked if he'd ever been barred from retrieving classified material, exotic or otherwise, during his career. Wilson, the former director of the Defence Intelligence Agency, and this is someone who's going to know about this stuff if it really is happening, was head of intelligence for the... He's not going to have to ask twice for it. Joined Chiefs of Staff in 1997 when he agreed to meet at the Pentagon with advocates of UFO declassification. Among them, he confirms, was Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell. The driving force behind that meeting was North Carolina UFO researcher and medical doctor Stephen Greer. Well, we all know how credible Greer is. He's zero credibility. Greer founded the Disclosure Project in an effort to grant amnesty to government whistleblowers willing to violate their security oaths by sharing insider knowledge about UFOs. At least 7 years ago, Greer was telling audiences about extracting a pledge from Wilson during that meeting to investigate special access projects involving UFO technology. But shortly where are we? But shortly thereafter, Greer claimed Wilson reported that he didn't have the proper security clearance to inspect those files. As Greer informed a Portland, Oregon audience in 2001, Wilson said, "I'm horrified that this is true. I've been in plenty of black projects, but when we tried to get this one, he was told," and I quote, "Sir, you do not have a need to know." Yeah, this is straight out of the X-Files, isn't it? Yeah, the head of intelligent joint staffs, you don't have a need to know. Neither did the CIA director, neither did the president. Yeah, right. The story's been circulating on the internet ever since and made it to Greer's book, Hidden Truth, because Greer makes a living out of this, of course. Science fiction stories, forbidden knowledge. Yeah, last year, but the thing didn't sprout legs until Mitchell began discussing the meeting during what turned out to be a media blitz in July. Mitchell avoided all mention of Wilson's name, but in a July 4th appearance on Larry King Live, the Moonwalker told CNN audience he'd learned the Admiral had found the people responsible for the cover-up, and for the people who were in the know and were told, "I'm sorry, Admiral, you do not have a need to know here, and so goodbye." And now an executive with a Minnesota-based defence contractor, Wilson told Devoid he'd accepted Mitchell's 1997 request because he was a former astronaut and maybe had more credibility than some person off the street. That's Greer. Wilson says he doesn't remember who else attended that meeting. That's how impressed he was with Greer. But he admitted a certain amount of curiosity about allegations of deep black UFO projects. "What is true is that I met with them," Wilson said in a phone interview. "What is not true is that I was denied access to this material because I didn't pursue it. I may have left it open with them, but it was not especially compelling, not compelling enough to waste my staff's time to go looking for it. Mitchell told Devoid he never heard directly from Wilson after their initial meeting. I'll leave that there. But, you know, this UFO leak of the century that Eric Davis was involved with was no such thing. It was just a lot of rubbish, basically. Like most of this UFO stuff, you know, as soon as you start looking at it with a critical eye, it all falls apart. What else have we got here? What's this one? Okay, this one's quite interesting. Eric Davis, remember, is involved with Hal Puthoff at the ATIP, and for some time they've been saying they had parts of alien spacecraft, or they had something that fell off an alien spacecraft. So let's just have a quick look at the image and see if we can get back to this. And this was an image they were spruiking. You know, because if you're a bit of a science fiction aficionado, a bit of an enthusiast, that might look like an alien material. And they said it had these strange properties with this very peculiar layering in it. Can you see that? Very peculiar layering. And there was no known process on Earth that could produce this, according to Puthoff and Eric Davis. I'll leave a link to this below so you can read this in its entirety if you want to. Now let's just go back to... I won't read all of this article, but I'll leave a link below. You can read it if you so desire. I'll just get to the... actually, this bit might be worth... Yeah. Okay, so let's just go, we'll start from here. Linda Moulton Howe has been promoting it since the 1990s, and it appears routinely in 21st century books about anti-gravity technology and UFOs, going back at least to the early 2000s. I'm torn between thinking that the Bigelow Group, because remember Bigelow funds a lot of this stuff, Puthoff and Davis and all that sort of mucking around in their shed, are blindly pursuing what they think is... Hang on. Going back to... I am torn between thinking that the Bigelow Group are blindly pursuing what they think is real US government research into magnesium bismuth layering, and thinking that they are cynically pulling bizarre claims from UFO literature to excite ufologists and UFO believers into thinking that they have real pieces of a flying saucer. A final... Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, well, I'm not going to go back and do that again, but it looks like I probably should have read the sentence before that. He's torn between thinking that the Bigelow Group are blindly pursuing what they think is real US government research into magnesium bismuth layering, and thinking that they are cynically and thinking that they are cynically pulling bizarre claims from UFO literature to excite ufologists and UFO believers into thinking that they have a real piece of a flying saucer. Well, I think personally it's the latter. I wouldn't doubt that for a minute. A final piece of the evidence suggests that Bigelow's men are overstating their claims. In 1996, Linda Moulton Howe commissioned technologist Nicholas A. Relter, himself an anti-gravity researcher and fringe believer in UFOs and paranormal things, to investigate the Roswell sample. Oh, so they're saying that came from Roswell now. I.e. the same piece that Puthoff is now promoting. Relter, is that his name, or writer? Relter determined that it was earthy. Oh, okay. So Linda Moulton Howe, hang on, let's go back here. Linda Moulton Howe commissioned technologist Nicholas A. Ralter, himself an anti-gravity researcher and fringe believer. Again, apologies for this. I don't have a choice but to read this through the camera viewfinder, so I have to move the camera across to read the whole line. Fringe believer in UFOs and paranormal things to investigate the Roswell sample, i.e. the same piece that Puthoff is now promoting. Ralter determined that it was earthly, and while unusual, was not impossible. In 2001, he updated his finding with this information. The combination of bismuth and magnesium had eluded us for 4 years, but then one day we found a reference to an obscure industrial process used in the refinement of lead. The process, called the Betterton-Kroll process, uses molten magnesium floated over the surface of liquid lead. The magnesium sucks up or pulls bismuth impurities out of the lead. Often the magnesium is used over and over again. Presumably this is the same process that was patented in 1938, producing a thin crust of layered magnesium and bismuth, which is removed from the lead. When the magnesium is reused, new layers would form. Yeah, the Fortean Times endorsed this solution in 2016. Remember that Vallee's sample was specifically identified as slag, i.e. industrial debris. However, Howe refused to publicised Ralter's results, preferring to string along the alien mystery. So there you go, there's Linda Moulton Howe stringing people along, not showing any evidence to the contrary. So she'll show you that piece of metal and say, well, this could be from an alien spacecraft. She won't tell you that it's been analysed and found to be completely terrestrial with a common, or not so common maybe, lead purification waste product. Industrial debris. Howe refused to publicise the results, preferring to string along the alien mystery. Of course, we would need a known sample made by the industrial process to test the alien versions against. But the distribution of the slag in industrialised nations, Vallee claims examples from France, Argentina and America, for example, point in favour of this solution. So, okay. So there's the TTSA passing off industrial waste as parts of alien spacecraft. Again, this is Davis and Puthoff. Puthoff was involved with the remote viewing business. No such thing, of course, as remote viewing. It's all nonsense. The new information here is that To the Stars seems to be collecting more of the same industrial waste that Linda Moulton Howe has been cycling through the UFO circuit for 22 years. The space-time in quote marks and gravitational in quote marks anomalies of the metal are also explainable and have been explained for decades. Howe, Puthoff and DeLong all ran high voltage through the material and made it move. Any piece of metal will react in the same way to high enough electrical voltage. If I understand the science correctly, the unusual isotope ratios may also be a result of the industrial process, since the resulting metal is artificial and not a natural occurrence. So there you go. You've probably seen jumper cables move. When if you try starting a car, you put a bit of current through it, the cables will move as the magnetic fields interact with each other. I haven't seen what space quote marks, space-time quote marks, and gravitational quote marks effects on video that are claimed for this thing on video. So I can't give you my opinion of what is actually happening. So basically, all these people are piffle peddlers. They're pushing stuff that they know is not extraterrestrial as extraterrestrial in order to keep interest going in this flagging UFO ET business. and to support their incomes, of course. All these people earn a living from spruiking this sort of nonsense. All right, well, let's just move on a bit, because we all know one of our favourite piffle peddlers doesn't actually make money out of it. You know, poor old Ben. He's Bedsit Ben. He's been in his bedsit for many years. Doesn't run ads on his channel, mind you. I don't run any on mine, but you know, I have a reasonable income in the real world. So I don't really need to. Certainly, unless I had something like 200,000 subscribers, it wouldn't be worth me putting any ads on them. But one of our he's one of the very, very few that don't make money out of this. Now, you know, I think most of us like Ben. I think he's a nice guy. He's an amiable buffoon. You know, he swallows all this nonsense, hook, line, and sinker. And I'll just do another quick clip that will, I think, give a pretty good indication as to why Ben won't let this go. Actually, before we go to the Ben Emlyn Jones bit, I skipped over those. I had all those panels at the bottom of the, you know, minimised at the bottom of the screen. I was going to continue on with the Eric Davis stuff before I went to the bismuth sample, but I suppose it's still Eric Davis related. Now, you know, Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff, they were involved with the Skinwalker Ranch, and you know, poor old Bob Bigelow poured millions into this. And you know, I've never seen a video, I've never seen any images. This is the only image I've ever seen for a supposed creature at the Skinwalker Ranch. Okay. Recent NM Skinwalker, New Mexico maybe, Skinwalker photo ignites fear. You know, they were peddling that Jeremy Corbell thing, the hunt for the Skinwalker. And Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff were all involved in this sort of stuff. Same sort of people that are involved with the TTSA. They're all piffle peddlers. It's all drivel. It's nonsense. Now, strangely enough, and I'd like to thank one of my commenters for this information, because I was unaware of it. I can't remember which one it was, so apologies for that, but many thanks to you for leaving the comment under my video about the Skinwalker Ranch ripoff, because if we go to this, there we go. Does that look familiar? Does that look familiar? And that is a creature. I mean, obviously it's a person. Even looking at the Skinwalker Ranch picture, you can tell it's a person walking on their hands and legs, you know, with and it's all out of focus at the head end, because the head end will be looking upwards and away from the direction the supposed creature was travelling in. But this is a clip from, it's actually a 1980, it's a B movie called Extro. The 1982, I think, was the Blu-ray release, but the original film was from 1980, and it's a very poor B science fiction movie. I'll leave a link to this below as well, and you can watch the film if you're feeling particularly psychotic. But the B movie was called Extro. It was released in 1980, and the Blu-ray release was in 1982. And what do we see? We see the Skinwalker Ranch creature. If I minimise that, it should be behind, I think. I'll minimise that. This is the trouble with doing this with the thing and not with the mouse. There's the Skinwalker creature. Good heavens, I'm terrified. I mean, this is just, you know, I mean, this is going to insult the intelligence of a bloody carrot, isn't it? Really. I mean, this is very obviously a person. You know, this is their backside here. There's their knees. They're looking away from the camera. They're looking away from the camera and they've got a mask on the back of their head. It's just pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. This is what Bob Bigelow paid millions of dollars for. Is this what people are buying when they buy Jeremy Corbell's Hunt for the Skinwalker? And there's the clip from Extro. Science fiction film Extro. Exactly the same creature. Okay, so now we'll just move on to the Ben Emlyn Jones bit. And now Ben Emlyn Jones is going to tell us why he will never ever admit that Roswell was nothing more than a Project Mogul or similar balloon. Why he keeps supporting these woo stories like free energy, 9/11 conspiracies, and recently he said that the Russians dug up an ET craft. Well, no, I really don't think so. Now, I've suspected this for some time, but I've often thought that Ben may very well not believe most of this stuff, but he runs with it because he lives in the world of woo, and without it, without significant friends like Miles Johnston and other influencers like Simon Parks, he would have nothing. So let's just have a listen from Ben himself.
I only usually get about 150, 180 myself, Ben, so I can tell you for a fact they're here to see you today.
Well, thanks very much, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
No, we like these topics, man. That's why I enjoy these shows. This is the kind of thing that, if we didn't have a show, Ben, if there wasn't, like, all of this alternative media, I bet you me and you would still be digging into these kind of stories right now on our own anyway.
I would, one way or another. I know I would, but I really like what you were saying at the beginning. I'd go out of my head through loneliness. I really would. I'd go nuts. I'd be like these guys on desert islands who start seeing things or talking to volleyballs.
Well, no, you definitely.
He's talking about the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks in it, of course, who was talking to either a football or volleyball called Wilson. So there we are. That's in Ben Jones's own words that he would be going he'd be going crazy with loneliness if it wasn't for the world of woo. So he's probably, I strongly suspect that he fully believes the Apollo moon landings happened. And there's certainly enough out there for even Ben to doubt that there was anything to the Roswell story. It's been debunked so many times. Smack in the face obvious there's nothing ET related with the Roswell story. And he may, I was going to say he may know that, but he may be such an enthusiast that, is what do they call it, self-denial, something like that, because he's written these 3 books, hasn't he? So he may believe the Roswell story. But there's so many of these, like free energy. Does he really believe that? 9/11, does he really believe that? This is why the people that love this stuff will never, ever... You can put any evidence under their nose. If you could put Ben in a time machine, take him back to June the 14th, 1947, when Mac Brazel discovered the debris in his field, and go out there with Mac Brazel and Ben would say this debris has been switched. If you took Ben to the moon and showed him the descent stage of the lunar module for any of the Apollo moon landing missions, and the footprints all around, the lunar rovers will still be there, Ben would say, "You put that there yesterday." These people are never ever going to admit there is nothing to this ridiculous nonsense. Okay, now this guy here is Kev Baker. Now I've listened to very little of a couple of his shows, to be perfectly honest, and some of the stuff, someone would phone up and say, "I'm thinking of." I think the planet Saturn is actually a 40-watt light bulb. And he'll say, I hear you, brother, I hear you, you know. Everyone that phones, he's never got an opposing view. It's just a lot of patronising drivel. So I thought, well, let's have a little look at what Truth Frequency Radio, and this is supposed to be Truth Frequency Radio. Truth Frequency Radio, which doesn't contain either, by the way. I don't think it's actually on the air. I think it's a web. I think it's a webcast. I don't think there's any radio involved in it. Only radio waves. And of course, the last thing you're going to hear on it is truth. It's absolute nonsense. It's a woo-woo radio station from start to finish. Anyway, let's just see what a Rational Wiki has to say about Truth Frequency Radio. Okay, well, perhaps not unsurprisingly, Truth Frequency Radio has a Rational Wiki entry. Truth Frequency Radio, TFR, is a a website that serves as the home to numerous radio talk shows promoting fake news and insane conspiracy theories. It's a self-proclaimed escapism portal of sorts from all those evil mainstream satanic news sources like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. They've forgotten the BBC there and the ABC. Now, Ben was just on the Kev Baker show saying, well, we know, he knows that the planet's being visited by many species. He goes on to describe them as mantids and Nordics and all this. Of course, he doesn't know any such thing. That may be Ben's opinion, but he certainly doesn't know the planet is being visited by any kind of alien, let alone many different species, and then go on to describe them. I mean, where do the mantids come from? The crayon drawings, the crayon scratchings of Simon Parkes or Julie Phelps, maybe. Let's run with that as truth, shall we? Truth. What else does it say about this radio station, this webcast or whatever it is? TFR offers low-quality radio programming. Around the clock, 24/7. I'll have to have a listen to it, I think. But as I say, I've listened to Kev Baker in the past, and someone will phone up and say, I think Saturn is a 40-watt light bulb, and he'll go, I hear you, brother, and I think you're right. I think you've got a very good point. Do you think it's incandescent or LED? I'm with you. It's just patronising drivel. I don't know whether the other programmes are going to be like that, but I don't know how much Kev Baker gets paid for this, but he certainly has the gift of the gab. What he says is rubbish, but he says plenty of it. Going back to the days of AM radio in America in the 60s, the DJs were fined something like $1 or $2 for every second of dead air. He wouldn't be getting fined very much, would old Kev? Okay, so it's a low-quality radio TFR offers low-quality radio programming around the clock, 24/7, with replays, usually dominating the graveyard schedule slots. Okay, so they play the same thing during the night. Their offerings include The Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray, Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, and of course Zachary K. Hubbard's very own The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard. Okay, just to name a few. An unusually large number of their programmers are wearing mirror or dark glasses in their website photos. Yeah, a lot of these people that want to create intrigue, I know something you don't know, I'm a secret agent, I'm on the inside, they'll wear these sunglasses, or the mirrored sunglasses. The free energy people are the same, the 5G idiots exactly the same, all wearing sunglasses. Appropriately named Lizard Ritual, which makes me wonder what kind of drugs they're on, or whether they're just hiding their riptoid eyes. Yes, okay, well, it could be that they're hiding their eyes because they are drug or booze addled, maybe. Who knows? Anyway, it's just a little bit on TFR. Can't say I'd ever heard of it before Ben mentioned he was on there, so I thought I'd have a bit of a look at Ben on TFR. I think this was a program before last, and I saw this Kev Baker, and you know, Kev Baker was. I looked at a bit more of Kev Baker's stuff, and it was awful. And I'm being over complimentary there. Absolutely awful. Anyway, let's move on to the next clip. As I'm sort of just doing this sort of, because I've got a bit of time on a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening, can't remember which. I'm just going to do a couple of clips, stitch them together, and see how it goes. On with the mystery tour. Or not, as the case may be. I do have some things to do today, so I'm going to have to stop making the clips there. So there we go, a bit of a mishmash. But I just thought that the wind was howling, and I was putting off some of the stuff I've got to do today for as long as possible, but it appears that I've run out of time for leisure activities, and I'm going to have to get on with it. So as always, thanks for watching, and perhaps I'll catch you again.